Boa noite a todos, bem-vindos a mais uma sessão das nossas entrevistas aqui no canal do BTG Pactual Digital. Hoje eu tenho uma grande honra de entrevistar um grande amigo meu, o Divesh Makan, um dos sócios fundadores da ICONIQ, uma das empresas que eu mais admiro como empresa de investimento. Ele vai explicar para vocês um pouco o que é a ICONIQ. A primeira vez que ele me explicou sobre a ICONIQ, eu duvidava que algo assim pudesse existir. Então, switching to English, Divesh, thank you so much for accepting our invitation for this live conversation. It's a true honor. I was just telling them a bit before that the first time I met you, when you explained to me of ICONIQ, I could not even believe that something like this even existed, right? It was so phenomenal, such a huge amount of knowledge and so many interesting people together, that I was just fascinated by it. So, welcome. Thank you very much for accepting. It would be great if you could give our audience a bit of a description of ICONIQ, a bit of description about yourself. You have a fascinating story also. If you could please do the intro, because I think you'll do it much better than I will.
Thank you, Roberto. First off, thanks so much for hosting me. Roberto, you and BTG have been phenomenal partners of ours at ICONIQ, so I'm lucky to call you a friend. And I enjoy my visits with you in Brazil. Each time you dose me with at least 4 or 5 shots of espresso, which doesn't help me, but I still remember that quite fondly in your conference rooms.
For the jet lag.
Thank you. Well, maybe I'll start with a bit of ICONIQ and then get on to way more interesting topics. But ICONIQ is an investment firm that serves most of the influential families, organizations, and countries around the world that we can be part of. Our view is that 250 people around the world made many of the decisions that affected most of us. And our job at ICONIQ was to get to spend time with these people, advise them, help them through their decision-making, help them through their investing. I think there's a slide we have there, Roberto, slide number, the first one.
There you go.
The short summary here is that the firm is about 250 employees now. And our primary function is to invest capital for these families, these countries, and these institutions with a very strong bent in technology, which is where we end up playing most of our time. The next slide gets to speak to something quite specific. Here we go. The thesis of the firm when we set it up, and this you'll hear throughout the conversation today, was the world was made up of a bunch of verticals: finance, sales and marketing, supply chain, logistics, all the aspects that you'd expect in a normal business. And one of those was technology. The world thought of this as a standard way of operating. When we started the firm up, the idea was that we didn't believe technology actually belonged as a vertical. We believed technology would be taken out and would be the first ever horizontal, which means that it would affect every single business in the world. And our view was either you'd be enabled by technology or you'd be disabled by technology. It was your decision as a business to embrace it. And as you can imagine, when we started off the firm, ICONIQ's been in existence for 9 years, but it's 9 years going on, almost 20 years, meaning that when we first started as a business and as a team at Goldman Sachs, which is where I had come from, this idea was being built at that point. So in the early years, everyone laughed at the idea that technology would be such an important aspect. They viewed technology as the guy who would give you your BlackBerry and then your iPhone, then fixed your Wi-Fi up and got Zoom to work properly. But the way we viewed it,
back then, right?
Yeah. But Sallouti, the way you guys look at it at BTG, where you look at fintech as really one of the pillars of your business, 10 years ago, you and I would never have had that conversation. And that's what every single business goes through and is thinking about. And if they weren't thinking about it today, I know they're thinking about it tomorrow for sure, given what we're living in today. So we'll touch on that in a bit. If you go to the slide before this, ICONIQ's board, we try to keep a low profile, but our board is a fairly active group of people that run large businesses that have strong opinions on how we should be running our business, and we learn a ton from them. But they include a bunch of operators, including the founders of Facebook, Mark and Dustin, the founder of LinkedIn, who's now on the Microsoft board, Reid Hoffman, Anne Mulcahy from Xerox, of course, Jerry Yang from Yahoo, Adit Mittal, who runs ArcelorMittal, Henry Kravis, David Bonneman, and Chase Coleman, who run 3 incredible investment firms. So the idea was to bring the group together, and the basis of the idea of ICONIQ was if you got really smart operators and you got them to bring their thinking together, you would have an incredible think tank to help you make better decisions. And our view was, if you could affect countries, companies, and sectors, we wanted you to be part of the ICONIQ family because we could learn from you. Capital was green and there was lots of it. Our challenge was taking that knowledge base and executing on it to make investment decisions and to enhance decisions we were going to make. So that's enough about the firm. And maybe I'll add a little bit about me, Sallouti, to round it up.
Just before we get to you, because that's fascinating, but it's amazing, right? Because you got together a group of people who had capital to invest, but more than that, knowledge and networking. You put them all together. I mean, you have even people who are competitors here. I mean, I can just imagine walking into one of these board meetings, you probably get butterflies on your stomach, right? You're afraid of what you're going to say. But you put all these together, and then the amount of knowledge, network, and opportunities that you generate from having this network is amazing, which is exactly what you guys have been doing, right? You've been channeling this knowledge and these opportunities into different products, be it the family office portfolio, be it a growth venture capital business, or be it a real estate business based on databases, right? Which we're going to talk about. So it's just fascinating.
Thank you, Roberto. I think we were lucky in that the team has been incredible in pushing this forward and pushing us and our boundaries to go more and more. And I think we were lucky about the timing, meaning technology stopped being people who played with laptops. It started being a lot more pervasive. Things in the air, the oxygen we were breathing. All of us communicate on WhatsApp. That change in mentality was what we were trying to capture, and having people who could see the future was very, very impactful for us to define our own future forward.
Mm-hmm. And you were going to talk about yourself. Please.
So I'll make this quick. I'm also from the Southern Hemisphere, which is the good news. I'm from South Africa. I grew up there, spent time at Anderson Consulting, did my MBA, went to Goldman Sachs, and ultimately got to be part of the founding group at ICONIQ. And the idea of the firm was really born from this idea that operating CEOs had a perspective on their business and on their area, their expertise. And if you could harness that in a way that allowed them to talk to you, you could have a better decision made. And what we found is that the only way to truly get an entrepreneur to spend time with you was for you to have a relationship that was much deeper than just an LP relationship. And that's how our family office got born. So with one part of our firm, we are the family office for many families around the world that look like this. And with the other part of the firm, we run a private equity business that's made up of a few different areas that invest capital on behalf of these families, and then significant capital on behalf of very large institutions around the world, as you'd expect. The journey that always reminds me, and I'll end on this, is that being from South Africa, you end up having a different perspective of how the world operates, very similar to Brazil. You're always assuming something's coming over your shoulder. You're always assuming that someone's out there. So you live in paranoia. Exactly. So with a state of paranoia that you're in, you end up building a business almost by mistake. And each day you come to work and you got to pinch yourself to realize how much fun you're having. And we're really lucky to have each other as partners. And I'm lucky to have my partners who are in this journey with me. So it's been quite a fun story. And I think that technology, and therefore our story, is just at the beginning of the book. It's about to be written.
We're going to get to technology, but before we do that, let's talk about this pandemic, coronavirus. as we chatted before, when you accepted this invitation, you are seeing a lot of effects from this pandemic, right? People working from home, how companies have to think about the future, what's happening in the demand for software and consequently data centers. Can you tell us a bit of what you're seeing as the results of this pandemic in the whole tech space and in the companies that you're talking to?
I think, Sallouti, the core thing here, and I think Tom Friedman, who did an incredible job for you guys last week, captured it well. He said there was a world before Corona, BC, and a world after Corona, AC. And we will never forget this moment in time because everything's going to change. So I'm not going to bore you with what you've already heard. I'm going to try to add things that maybe are particularly new here. First is every single CEO I speak to around the world of large companies, medium-sized companies, and small companies are asking about this concept of what is my work from home strategy? What is my pandemic strategy? No one is assuming that this is the end. We all never want to be caught in a place where this could ever happen to us again. No one's ever modeled everyone working from home at the same time. So suddenly you've got everyone, imagine your compliance team not being around you. Imagine your trading desk at BTG not being close to you. How do you operate if you can't be in the office?
It's happening. Right?
Yeah, and we're learning that. So we are now thinking through every aspect of what happens and the knock-on effect of what you need to have. And what they're truly asking in a simplified English way is, what is my software solution that can make me operate from my home? What is the cloud service I need to be aligned to that allows me to work in the ether so my business can operate? And ultimately, the expression of that ends up being Amazon and Microsoft's businesses, as you're seeing their stock move, is a function of many things, but one of them is how great the cloud business is. And if you look at things like data centers, which ultimately are the infrastructure that allow this to work, there's a public company called Digital Realty. It's the best comp out there, but looking at real estate, you'll find that it's the one asset class that's the highest in terms of net return across the sector. It's up 18% for the year. And the reason why, despite the market being down, is everyone's realized that if you were not thinking about technology as being part of your life, streaming, online education, 5G is coming, semi-autonomous cars, the move to data is going to change everything for all of us. And that's one big change. The second big theme I'd point out is just with retailers. And I'll share with you some of the information on China, but more broadly, China's coming back, and I'll share with you a little more when we get down to the virus and how to think about that. But the way that China's coming back, and if you see this, you look at just what's in the public press about companies like Starbucks and others, their stores are opening. Nike talked about 85% of their stores now up and running in China. And what they're finding is consumption went from 60%, now it's back to 75 to 80% of where it was at the peak. But they've changed their business model. If you go to a coffee shop in China, you won't have a lot of seating area. It'll be people coming in to do non-contact pickup. It's people who are ordering on the app. It's people who are walking in and walking out. That's a very different business model than what you had before of a larger footprint. In clothing, they found a challenge in China where people don't want to try clothing on. So think of women buying clothes. If they can't try it on, it's a very difficult thing to make a purchase in. This is going to speed the whole movement to e-commerce up in a way that none of us could have imagined it. There's a simple formula in technology investing, in consumer companies. We call it CAC, customer acquisition cost. No different, Sallouti, from what you guys have in your online businesses. But right now, for someone to try online shopping, whether it's grocery shopping or just regular e-commerce, the CAC is zero because you don't have a choice. You got to order stuff to survive. So the CAC is zero. However, the customer experience for anyone who does this is so damn good. I mean, imagine you go in line in a store, you spend an hour commuting there, hour commuting back, and maybe you get annoyed once or twice by some salesperson that isn't that smart. And by the way, they probably don't have your size when you go in. Super annoying, 4 hours waste of time. Now you can sit in your underwear at home and you can order what you want, and magically 3 days later, it comes to your door, literally to your door. So the client engagement and the customer experience is exceptional. So with no marketing dollars to acquire a customer, and then with the ability for you to have an incredible experience, people are going to start switching to these types of experiences in a very significant way. So we have to start planning for this. And if you look at things like iPads and laptops, those sales are spiking through the roof, of course, because people are sitting at home. I think
everybody realized they needed to upgrade their hardware, right?
That's right. That's right.
That happened in my house. I had to get my kids a new laptop.
Yeah. And that's not going to change, by the way. It wouldn't surprise me if teaching is supplemented with online school, because we're going to find that our kids probably are slightly less dumb than they were before, because they're screwing around less in school. They're actually paying a little more attention.
The best thing I heard about education is that you're going to have the inverted classroom, right? In the past, we used to go to the schools to hear a lecture and go home and do homework. Now, you'll probably look at the lecture at home on your screen and then go to school to do some group work and get help from your teacher in what you have difficulties with. Sincerely, we did not learn that way, but it's probably going to be much more effective, right, if you think about it.
Sallouti, you spent a lot of money on a very expensive MBA at Wharton. And
it was undergrad, so it was not that expensive.
Well, if you look at that MBA now and you could get your Wharton experience sitting in San Francisco or sitting in Sao Paulo, it's a different decision.
Yeah.
Well, that's
but I would still like to go just to enjoy the social life, right? It's a big part of it. Even though it's as you said, it's going to be interesting to see how that changes, right? The whole behaviors. It's pretty clear that the whole consumer behavior toward technology is going to change, but the whole social behavior is still a question, right? And you just mentioned a few things of it. Talking about this, let's talk about society, right? You mentioned China, and you guys follow a lot of what's going on in Asia, across Europe, different societies which have different attitudes towards privacy and individual freedoms or rights. What have you been seeing in the different countries of technology being used to track the virus? Not only this virus, future viruses, things like that, which you think are interesting that people should know about, and then they have to question whether they were willing to accept it or not, because there are clearly consequences, pros and cons.
So there's containment and there's lockdown, and I think we have to differentiate what those two words are. So lockdown, the way that China approached it, which is the way that many countries should have approached it. China did this, Singapore did this, Israel did this in some way, and so did Switzerland. What they did is they went to your phone carrier and they said, okay, I want Sallouti to be tracked, that he never leaves his zone. And I can tell that because I can see all your movement with your phone. Because remember, your phone transfers signal back to different cell towers. So they were able to confirm that people did not leave their home. They were in lockdown for real. And that's the first step we have to get comfortable with in the other countries. In Asia, it's much easier, but in the US, we haven't done any of that. In Brazil, there's none of that happening. In fact, in Brazil, my understanding based on some of the movements of some of the technology companies is until a week ago, Brazil was still very social.
No, that's not true. They're actually following the patterns of behavior, but on an anonymized basis. So respecting the laws, but even that has already had some controversy. So people are very sensitive to being watched.
And to me, that's going to get to the containment issue. So you've probably been reading about Google and Apple that have talked about a partnership using some method of a handshaking. So what this is in English is the Bluetooth device within each phone is turned on, and each time I meet someone, my phone registers a handshake and records who I'm meeting. So Divesh meets Sallouti, we meet, my phone records it and your phone's recorded. One day, if you get sick, you can hit a button saying, I got the COVID. Immediately my phone notifies me, hey, because you met Sallouti sometime in the past, you should be careful because maybe you also got affected by him and here's the date. So this is an interesting concept. It's difficult to get done because the Bluetooth technology is good but not great. So I'm a little skeptical it's going to work right. However, we have to find technology solutions because there is no other way for us to get this to work. There is no way for us to get the data we need. What got China to be in this place where they are back to work and living was complete shutdown and then strong vigilance that no one broke the shutdown. We have, in theory, strong shutdown. In the US, we don't have any shutdown. We have shutdowns per states. We have recommendations. But we have places like Texas that people are still, walking around like it's normal. Wisconsin, had people go voting. So you've got these things that are happening throughout the US that are not consistent, which makes the lockdown feature fail. And then containments are nice to have. But if we don't get this to work and tech is not there, we won't get back to normal because there's no virus containment. The J&J CEO said in his earnings report earlier this week that they don't expect to have any vaccine in quantity. And he gave a quantity range of 600 million to 900 million units that will be available until the end of Q1 next year. So we have to have a Texas solution here.
Yeah, it's going to be either a tech, or I think New York will be an interesting situation because to some extent you might get something close to herd immunity, right? Because it took so long to contain, you had such a huge contamination, which you would expect some kind of experiment of that sort to be happening in Africa, but it's actually going to happen in New York, right? With all the wealth and the technology. But the whole containment issue and vigilance issue that you have in Asia, clearly I think would be a huge challenge for Western societies, Brazil and US included, right?
That's right.
I would probably say even South Africa.
Yeah, that's right. And I think people value the lack of privacy, that aspect of it. Too, it's a cultural thing. We didn't grow up with these sorts of monitors. And the question that's going to be posed to us at some point is, what's more important, the sanctity of the financial system so we can get back to making money as people, or our privacy that's going to be in question? And we have to make a trade-off at some point about one of those two.
Yeah, there's probably some compromise to be done.
Yeah.
And Divesh, as you mentioned, you have the privilege to talking to a huge amount of CEOs, a huge amount of government leaders. What's on their mind? How are they thinking? What are the next steps? I mean, first step is containment, flatten the curve, then what?
So I think the belief until recently, Sallouti, was that the China curve would be the one that the rest of the world would follow. And the China curve was pretty straightforward. You found out the issue, you locked yourself up for 10 weeks, and then you came out and it's business as usual. Unfortunately, in the last 2 weeks, many of the CEOs I've spoken to and government leaders have realized that we're not China. And there are a couple of factors here. One is that when China went into lockdown, as I mentioned earlier, they locked down hard and police were on the street to ensure that you follow the rules. In the US, just yesterday, 130,000 people flew across the country. Now, the same day last year, it was 2.1 million people that flew across the country. So it's obviously a big difference. But there's still 130,000 people that flew across the country. Someone from New York flies to Texas. Someone from Texas flies to San Francisco. You are spreading this thing in a very different way. So that's one. Two, the second order effect of unemployment is slowly sinking into America. And I'm going to be specific to America here, but I don't think this is that different for any other country. In China, GDP is a function of many things, but 35% of it comes from consumer, some sort of usage from the consumer consumption. In the US, it's 70%. If we don't consume, our GDP really struggles. There's no government infrastructure that can support us. There's nothing. We need consumption. And last week, I'd spoken to 5 retail CEOs of big clothing companies, large public ones, and they had fired a collective 1 million people last week. And I asked them, would you go back and hire all these people if there was a V-shaped recovery and we were back to normal, whatever normal is, in June, July? And the comment was, no, I would not. I'd probably hire back between 75 and 80%. And I dug a little deeper, and what they said is 7% of the people were people I should have fired anyway. I didn't get around to doing it. Things were good. It wasn't that bad. You can have a little fat in the system. We all have them in our companies. Another 15% were people that they said, look, I can't afford to take them back. My business model, I know, is going to change a little bit. And everyone at my company who's here can work 15% harder. The belief that I had to do all these things has now gone. People are grateful for their job again. And you need moments like this to make you appreciate what you have, rather than, why don't I have 7 cups of coffee? Rather
unemployment at 3.7 can make people not that committed.
That's right. That's right. And that unemployment issue is a big deal. So if you assume 20%, today the unemployment data came out in the US and we had 21 million people that are unemployed. If that number stays where 20% are not hired back, the US unemployment rate after the spike, which will go away, will double from 4%, 4.5%, to closer to 9, 10%. America's never seen that for many, many decades. And that's a real issue. So the concern that was felt across all the CEOs and the government leaders that we've been talking to is the second order effect of this unemployment. And it's broad-based, meaning if I go up and down any street here in San Francisco, or New York for that matter, there's shops that are boarded up. Restaurants are shut down, and they're going to stay shut down. They can't afford to reopen. Small businesses, which make up 60+% of American lifestyle, cannot afford and have already probably gone bankrupt. They were living month to month. So this is finally kicking in. And this is how the reality of the world in the eyes of many of the leaders that I'm talking to. And then you marry that with the fact that they are convinced at this point that vaccines won't be available until the first quarter of next year, as I mentioned. And the reality is there won't be enough vaccines for everyone in the whole world until the end of next year, best case. So it's not just we living with the 1 month of stay at home. We're going to have this on our mind for 6 to 8 months because there's no good testing solutions yet. And even the antibody testings, the belief is that they now are questioning how long you keep the antibodies in your body for.
Yeah, Korea had some cases, right, of reinfection, which is still a doubt.
So
it's amazing how much we start to know about these viruses, right?
That's right.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. So the bottom line here is that we're not China, and in a global world like the US requires for it to function, we will likely reinfect each other until there's a solution. So how do we reinvent our world, and what does that reinvention look like? Do you want to sit on a plane next to someone that may have the virus? Do you want to go watch a movie? Do you want to go to soccer to watch, AC Milan or someone play? It's a different issue. So I think we have to really think through what that looks like, and this is where everyone is sitting in a very pondering state. At the same time, they're looking at the stock market.
It's not only how to exit, but what the world will be like after, right? It's amazing. So if we shift gears here and talk about something more optimistic, right? More upbeat thing, change a bit the subject. Everybody's tired of talking about the virus and its effects. Let's talk about technology, which is what you guys live and breathe. So what are the themes, the big themes that you're seeing? What's different? How are you guys looking to invest? What are you guys looking in your portfolio that you like and like even more now? Things that are worried. I mean, please don't go into specific examples. I know you cannot.
Yeah.
But if you could just give us the themes, I think that'd be perfect.
Sure. So I think there's a few things that were already in the works that will now take a much faster movement. So everyone's interest in their health has been a bigger and bigger trend because now for the first time we get real-time data. We can get real-time data on everything from your heartbeat, how long you meditated, your sleep rhythm, right? There's everything about what you're doing so you can learn about yourself and optimize it. But some of the biggest retail companies that make shoes and the like are thinking of putting a small little microchip in your shoe. And the microchip talks to your phone. It tells them how many steps you've taken, what kind of material you've run on. Is it a hard substance like concrete, or is it soft substance like beach sand? It tells them the temperature. It tells them the frequency, the location. All that goes to your phone to ultimately tell you when your shoe has run out, literally. Because the hardest point of people making decisions around purchasing is, when do I replace what I have? But imagine you could know that. And by the way, also know about your own health. People are perversely curious about themselves. There's a massive ego involved in knowing more and more about your own body. And if I can feed you data about yourself, you will, like a pervert, watch this over and over again. So this is what's going on. So this is one big theme. This is not getting any slower. In fact, if anything, people are going to be even more conscious of this going forward. So we're seeing this in hardware, and we're seeing software to match it. The sleep ring that Sallouti pointed out on his finger tracks his temperature, the number of hours of sleep, what's deep sleep, what is REM sleep. And the idea is that sleep is the most important thing for your day to be better the next day. So why wouldn't you want to invest in better sleep? So that's sort of one big theme, I'd say. The second big theme that is prevalent right now is the way that we're able to use data to make decisions. So, and I'll use a silly example here. Starbucks, until recently, was the biggest digital wallet in the US. What I mean by that is people had a Starbucks app on their phone, and they loaded money into the app. And from that app, they would go and buy coffee. But imagine the data that Starbucks has. They know what Sallouti likes to drink. They know he likes soy milk, doesn't like regular milk. They know that he likes 2 shots of espresso in the morning, and he likes a tall, mochaccino with chocolate in it in the evening. But suddenly they can start predicting what to buy. They can look at supply chain. They can make decisions on their customers. They also have your money. Remember, you've given them your money in the wallet before you even need it. And the average wallet probably has about 6 weeks worth of money is in it. So suddenly you can make decisions about these types of businesses that you weren't able to do before. A big clothing retailer, until recently, didn't store any data, and recently being 5 years. So in 40 years, they stored no data about their customers. They only stored the clothing designs. Every 5 years, they would take your customer data of what you bought from them and throw it away because it wasn't relevant to them. But imagine you knew every purchase I'd made, and you could monitor and look at what I'd buy and when I was buying it and where I was buying it. This is now becoming more and more reality. Every single company in the world is thinking about big data and how to use the data to make better decisions. It makes supply chain more efficient. It also makes you think of your customer, because ultimately what they realized is that consumers are not shopping the same way anymore. They're shopping in a very different way. And if you don't know what your customer even wants, it's hard for you to predict things. Fashion, if you look at high-end fashion, not fast retailing, but traditional fashion, they make decisions on what to buy about a year before. They're going to make a bet that what they think you're going to like next summer today, whether you like green and you like tight t-shirts or loose t-shirts, all those decisions are made about a year in advance. That's a very difficult thing to do without data. So that's sort of the second big theme I'd say that's coming across. The third big theme really ties into how people are spending time. So in the US, people spend 3 hours a day on a mobile device. 90% of that time is spent in-app, and 10% is spent on a browser. On the in-app world, in the mobile minute, the way we think about it, what do you do for a minute of your time? Well, Facebook takes up about 20% of it. Messaging of some sort takes up 15% of it. And gaming and entertainment make up another 30%. If you go back to when I was a teenager, which was, 25, 30 years ago, I'd save every penny I had to do very stupid things with it. People now save money to play games online, to buy a virtual pack of popcorn. And I know Sallouti smiled. He was not doing any of that stuff back in his teenage days.
No, but it's amazing. It's amazing how for somebody from our generation to think of spending money to buy something that's going to give you extra power in a game that you'll do well, yeah. It's almost unethical, right? When you think about it, yeah. Because it's the financial power for the gaming. But we have a great company here in Brazil, which makes us very, very proud, right? Our friends from Wildlife, OTFG. You talk to those 2 kids, they're kids. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. They've built a world-class gaming company in São Paulo. It makes me, as a Brazilian, extremely proud, right? As to have fellow entrepreneurs like these guys.
Yeah. Sallouti, they're a great story for everyone, because not only did they get multiple games right, but they went and created a tennis game just last year that's taken the world by storm. And tennis, you're right, it's built in the back of Sao Paulo. It's pretty incredible to get the talent. And then the feedback that you get to see is you realize how hiring is very different also in this world of technology. I don't care what school you went to. It's a nice to have. All I care about is, can you code? And can you code with a power like these guys are hiring? It's unbelievable, because it makes you realize that in any city, wherever you are, if you have a nucleus of people that are studying computer science from good schools, so they get the basics of the knowledge, and you can do incredible things.
Yeah, for sure. Any more themes you want to bring to us, or can we move on?
The one final theme I probably would pick on, because we're all living it right now. Most of us are using Zoom or StreamYard or they're watching Netflix, some basis like that. This movement of data coming to us and us consuming data has already been a big part of the dialogue to date. We've talked about 5G, the whole advent of semi-autonomous cars. While it's less important whether cars are driving themselves or not, for every semi-autonomous car to be in the marketplace, which I believe will be, every car will be somewhat autonomous, meaning there'll be sensors on it. The data you're getting from sensing is incredible. And that'll be within us in a couple of years. But all that data that we're able to store is phase one. And the next phase of this is how do you analyze that data? But more and more, we're in the business of trying to understand how do we store data? Think of data centers, think of software companies that allow you to store this data in some sort of database. But the second big wave we're going to see is in software in particular, is the ability for us to analyze data, because having lots of data is only useful if I'm able to analyze it and find trends. So people call it AI, it's called machine learning. They're all fancy words, but these things have been around for 30 or 40 years. Sallouti has a bunch of people that work on his desk. It's called manual AI. Sallouti pays them to look for trends by staring at pieces of paper and looking at the screen. That's manual AI. Where do you find that? Now imagine instead of 50 inputs, you have 1 billion inputs, and you're able to look real time at that data to make decisions on whether you go left or right, whether you buy seeds for your crop, whether it's going to be raining tomorrow. All that's, the more we have to store data, the more we're going to be able to analyze. And that's where the power of technology companies is becoming louder and louder in the environment. These are not companies per se. They're going to be much, much bigger than that. So that's probably the third big trend I wanted to highlight.
Yeah. Let's talk about investments, right? I mean, I know you guys, I follow your track record. Your growth strategy performance is amazing, right? If I'm not mistaken, you're in your fourth fund, right? All top quartile, some of the vintages top 5%. I don't know how much I can talk about the individual investments. I'll let up to you, because you're the one that has to watch your compliance. Some that are public, some that are not.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Over 25% IRR in dollars and all these funds. I think over 70 investments in top-notch tech companies. What is the philosophy that been able to, or the themes that you follow that's been able to get these amazing returns, right? I mean, it's very easy to talk about SaaS, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, fintech, but you not only talk about it, but you've invested, you've succeeded, and you have the returns. Can you talk a bit about how you guys are doing this whole growth VC philosophy you have?
Sure, Sallouti. So I think that, first off, we were really lucky to be at the right place at the right time. The world was moving toward the cloud, and we embraced that with our whole firm. And we tied ourselves to the cloud, for better or for worse, by the way. It could have ended up quite badly, but thankfully it didn't. And our view was that more and more companies, larger ones, would get behind this theme because it was the only way we're going to operate. So as we went through that thesis, the team were phenomenal in breaking down every sector. Think finance, marketing, supply chain, logistics, all the aspects of our traditional businesses. And we said, what software would replace people? What software would enhance your function to get you data in a much faster way? And I think the key theme that we were noticing, if you think of a large public company, whatever the company is, whether it's Walmart or SAP or someone of this nature, if you think 20 years ago, there were very few software packages that one of these large corporates would have. They had probably SAP. It was the gold standard. SAP had all these packages underneath it because you had let someone come inside. You had let someone see your data. You had let someone analyze all your stuff in order to get the report that you want. And what changed over the last 20 years is that, one, is the price point became much cheaper, but two, the ability for you to translate any language that your computers at your home office, your mainframe had. Your ability to translate that language into something that another software company that did something very focused could do became much easier. So now if I wanted to find out in my building who was coming in between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning and who was leaving between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m., the things I could use now, there's a software package that can tell you exactly that. I don't need to go and run a very complex report in SAP to get that. So what happened is the moment you had scale, you had lots of data, you had processing power, and you had people who were able to build software packages that were unique to each problem, whatever the problem is, you will now be able to build businesses out of it. And companies love them because the beauty of a SaaS business is I pay you every month for a license. So there's no massive investment in millions of dollars later to put the package in and bring consultants from McKinsey and from Accenture and other firms like this. I can just turn it on and I'm able to get data. So we were lucky in that we were able to pick up this trend. And then the team were fantastic in going through and investing in the market leader across every one of these. And I think what we've gotten wrong is we didn't appreciate the speed of which the world would go toward this. And we were obviously bullish, but we weren't bullish enough. So what you find consistently is this theme is continuing at a faster rate than we've ever imagined it to be.
No, it's amazing. If you think about cloud computing and SaaS, it's amazing. I remember the first time somebody showed me a diagram that had that little cloud, I thought it was a joke. Right? Yeah. It took me a while to grasp the concept that what that meant was that the processing was happening somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest example that erases all of us is to question how many of us actually do streaming of movies to our home. 5 years ago, the answer was probably zero. No one is streaming a movie. The idea of streaming a movie versus owning a DVD seemed foreign. Like just the concept of ownership. What do you mean? I'm not going to buy the DVD. I can buy it. It's easier for me. Now,
then you started downloading the movie or downloading the song, right? Which was the intermediate step.
That's right. That's right. In fact, a lot of success of companies like Spotify and other music companies has been the ability for us to access it as easily, married with the fact that Apple made it easy to have music on the go again. It's actually picked up the interest in music quite significantly from where it was.
Yeah, it actually saved the music industry, right? If you think about it, everybody thought it was going to die, and now it's full force again.
Yeah.
And finally, I think you have one investment theme which just fascinates me, and I see some questions here of our viewers about real estate.
Yeah.
And they want to talk about residential, but I'm not going to make you do that because I know that's not what real estate you like to talk about.
Yeah.
But you have this phenomenal product, which is top performance, which is real estate for data centers, right? Can you explain to our viewers what that's about?
Sure. So traditionally, if you think of real estate, there was commercial real estate, there was residential, there was hotel, and there was other. Everything else was other. And the story in real estate was also always location, location, location. That's all that mattered. As all of us went to more streaming and more 5G and more data and in all things we've been talking about, education online, ultimately you have to be able to house it in the cloud, as you pointed out. And I would look at Amazon, I would look at Microsoft, and you notice that their cloud businesses have grown, are growing 40 to 60% year on year on businesses that are $10 billion plus in revenue. These are not small businesses. So to grow at that scale is very, very impressive. Microsoft, Amazon's like $20 billion. So
it's amazing how people underestimate how much Amazon Web Services is important for Amazon, right?
Yeah, of course. It's a massive, massive reason why their successful stock price is what it is. And it allowed them to go into other non-profitable business.
Exactly.
Because the profit coming out of the cloud services were huge. The reality is, in order to do cloud services and for giving us all the SaaS that we operate on and the streaming we do, ultimately the cloud is in fact a data center. It sits somewhere in a very secure location where it can be housed. And typically they're in cities, they're in places where there's a very large fiber optic connection point. It's got to be quick because none of us want any latency in our update on our little phone or on our browser. You want it immediately. So what we were fortunate with is just seeing that trend. Again, being a big software investor, we were causing a lot of this trend. And our real estate team realized this and quickly jumped on the idea of maybe we should get involved in building data centers. And if you go back 5 years, it was hard for us to get a partner. It was hard for us we have a firm called IPI, and IPI couldn't get bank financing the same way because people were skeptical that our leases were real. They were skeptical that people wouldn't grow out of technology. They were skeptical that people would still use the cloud. So
but as a financier, I would be skeptical because if it didn't work, there's nothing you could do with the real estate.
That's right. That's fair. That's fair. And now go 5 years later, and it's a very different world because all of us are living it every day. Zoom, Eric, the CEO, talked about this a few weeks back in one of his public notifications. He talked about how they were trying to get more space freed up because the volume of demand on their product was something that he had never expected. So Sallouti, I think we've had, again, really good luck to play that same cloud theme from only software to now being software and then this infrastructure play. The way we look at it is we don't want to be betting on real estate. This is digital infrastructure.
It's still the theme. It's the same theme.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Divesh, I had promised you that we would keep this to 45 minutes. We're quite close. I'm just over by 1 minute. Listen, every time I talk to you, I always tell my kids and my wife, it's amazing. It's mind-boggling. I feel so stupid when I go back home because how did I not think about all these themes? And it's really a privilege to bring some of that to our clients. So I'd like to thank you so much for accepting. You're very low profile. You rarely do this. And for us, it's a huge, huge honor that you have accepted to have this chat with us and with our clients. So really, thank you very much.
Sallouti, thank you for having me. You guys have been incredible partners to us. And each time I come and spend time with you to understand the Brazilian economy and for a group to actually know what the hell's going on is actually vital for us to make better decisions. So thank you for the time on that and happy to do this.
Thank you, Divesh. Take care.
All right,
hope I see you in person very soon.
I'm looking forward to that.
Behind us.
Looking forward to that.
Tá bom. Obrigado, gente. Boa noite. Um prazer ter vocês com a gente aqui no BTG Pactual Digital.